In this video with Squawky Birds, I test a BMW Z3, which you might think is not very hubnut, but this is why I think it is. So the BMW Z3, yeah, I've come all the way to New Zealand and have driven a quite smart, sporty BMW. This is Mr. I don't like sports cars, but there's a few reasons why I'm going to drive this one. One of them is that these are getting very affordable now. They've actually started getting quite cheap in the you know, few grand sort of area, and that's really not a bad car for the money. This one is a very late one. It's a 2002, so it's the facelift. It's got the 3-litre 6-cylinder engine, so it's somewhat punchy. That engine produces 228 brake horsepower, I think, 231 as a PS figure. It has rather a lot of torque and a 5-speed automatic gearbox. Just taking in the styling here, it's got the facelift back end, which is unsurprising because it's a facelift example. And there we go, 3-litre I. So by this stage, all of them had the flared arches, big fat arches. When it first came out, the 4-cylinders had sort of a skinnier look to them. And of course, the slightly unusual fact that we're looking at a Bond car here. It's up there on the list with the Citroën 2CV, Renault 11 and Ford Mondeo as one of the more unlikely Bond cars. But yeah, heavily featured in the film GoldenEye. And it has to be said, I don't think that was one of Bond's finest moments, to be honest. I mean, let's face it, it's no Aston Martin, is it? I mean, for a start, everything seems to work. But yeah, this is the most powerful of the non-M versions. The Z3M was the really potent one, which you could have as the funky coupe thing as well. But this is a proper floppy top, as they say. It is the full-blown convertible. Speaking of which, I'm going to see if I can get the roof to lower, because that might improve the looks for a start, and also it's actually sunny. So we come in, we pull that clip, we pull that clip, and we push the roof up a little, and then we press a button behind me. There we go. Away goes the roof. And we shall come back for more engine noise later on. So with the roof down, I think this is quite a handsome looking machine, really. We've got a bit of a windbreak going on, which is good, because even though I've got less hair now, I don't necessarily want to ruffle it. But yeah, amusingly, these were built in America. This one was sold new in New Zealand, I believe, and right at the end of production. In fact, New Zealand gives us handy information. So we can see that it's a 2002, and it looks like it was registered in May 2002. So that would suggest it is New Zealand from new. Slightly distracted by the hub nut sticker. That's another reason I'm driving this car. It does belong to a hub nutter. It's a hub nutter who's put me up for a couple of nights here in Whangarei, and I'm very grateful for that. It's a lovely house. He's been making me some lovely food, and one condition was I drive his BMW. So even though it's not the most obvious of hub nut cars, I'm going to do just that. But where would we be without a look at the plastic engine cover? We might see an engine if we're really lucky. So with the bonnet finally raised, we can actually have a look at the big lump of plastic on top of it. One thing that I find quite amusing about the BMW Z3, if we just have a peek at the wipers in all their glory, hiding under the bonnet edge there, is that it's designed by a Japanese chap whose name I've utterly forgotten. I'll probably try and put it here if I remember. And he was also responsible for the E36 BMW and the E39. It's the 3 Series and the 5 Series of the 1990s. The platform of this car is that E36, so it is kind of an evolution, if you like. So yeah, very similar under the skin. And before we get going, I will say I have driven the 4-cylinder versions, and they're really quite good. I'm not sure I'd choose one over an MX-5, but yeah, they're not a bad steer at all, as long as you don't want the most cutting edge sports car. A little bit soft, a little bit floppy. But the MX-5 doesn't come with a 3-litre 6-cylinder engine, unless you find one from somewhere and jam it in, which some people do. So I think we'd better go and see how it compares, really. Open up the handle, so taking the interior, a world of black but some silver highlights, brighten it up a touch and just add a bit of class to proceedings, I think. Lower myself in. You do sit very high up. That was always a complaint of these cars, that you feel more like you're sitting on it than in it. So the actual seat base is quite high off the ground, but that can't be helped. That's just what they are. Very clear, very simple, concise dash, and the center console is also very clean. But look at the build quality difference. You remember the Mercedes-Benz SLK I drove in the Netherlands? That looked terrible, whereas this looks really quite nice. There's a nice fit and finish. Nothing is warped. There's a tiny bit of cloth lifting off on that door capping, and this apparently comes out for fun every now and then. But overall, the ambiance is very, very good. Is that a headlamp switch? Yes, it is. Oh wow. Unexpected. I wasn't expecting it to do that. There we go, typical BMW stalks and tiny little buttons for the fog lights hidden away down there. We've got a 5-speed automatic gearbox, traction control. I'm not turning that off because I'm not mad. We've got air conditioning by the look of it as well. No sport mode. Well, you sort of have, because you've got a manually sort of a sport mode going on. Indicator noise check. But that sort of sounds like a proper one, but I can't make my mind up if it actually is or not. Tiny little ashtray down here. And there we go, airbags both sides. A little cubby box here. Oh, 2 cubby boxes. Is that well, that's quite a deep one. So you can hide quite a bit in there. But in fact, there's something in there moving about a bit. I don't really know what that is. It looks like it might have been a display of some sort once upon a time. I'm going to say that's not working very well anymore. I'm going to stuff that down there and hope it won't make too much noise. Hiding down here is the switch for the roof, right where you don't really want it to be. And we've got, yeah, this little wind deflector, which can be unzipped should you want the full wind in the hair experience. But enough waffle. It's time to go for a drive. So I will mount you up as well as I can. Obviously my mounting points are somewhat limited, so it's going to be a passenger window job. Shut the door, bang, start the engine, and I'm going to drop my window just for a bit more of the roadster vibe. I'm going to apply my seatbelt because that's a sensible thing to do, and I'm going to rev the engine quite unnecessarily. Yeah, that's quite a nice noise, I'd say. Crunch it into D. I did use the handbrake because we were parked on a hill, so I thought I'd help the transmission along a little, just because I'm hypocritical. And we've got a 70 km/h speed limit here. So. And we got there quite quickly. So yeah, that's something an MX-5 doesn't necessarily do. It just doesn't have that sheer grunt. At 70 km/h, he's only just above 40, so that's not really a chance to absolutely nail it. But I will say, these are nice cars to drive. I find the steering a little too light, and it needs a bit too much twirling as well. Maybe that's just because I've been driving a Citroen BX, which has fairly direct steering. The ride is firm, but I'd say supple as well. But oh no, that's not going to work. You've fallen off there. The ride is clearly a bit too bouncy. I can't promise you're going to stay there any longer, but we'll give it a go, because what else are we going to do? So when you're smooth, it's smooth, but when you want some serious playtime, yeah, she can get her hitches her skirts up, I believe is the phrase, quite nicely. But really, these were always more Grand Tourers than out-and-out sports cars. 0 to 60 time is around 7 seconds, I think. It's quite brisk, really. But yeah, raw power doesn't a sports car make. Hopefully the mount isn't going to fall off. I can see you wobbling around quite a lot, but there's not a lot I can do about that, really. I have limited equipment with me here in New Zealand. But we shall stop here because there's some important considerations I've entirely forgotten, and I want to be stationary while we focus upon the windscreen wipers. So let's give them a go. Well, yeah, that's getting me quite a lot. But good overlap, no triangle of doom. Nice clearing, actually. It comes right to this edge here. I think, yeah, I even like the look of the wiper arms. That's quite tasty. So I will say that's definitely a pass on wipers. All these people out for a run. How silly. Could be driving a BMW like me. Ha ha. Oh, that was a nice ute. Yeah, in terms of practicality, the boot isn't a bad size. Maybe I'll remember to show you. Yeah, you wouldn't get much more than a decent overnight bag in there. My enormous suitcase wouldn't fit. I would be better off with a ute. It's one of those cars that didn't have a great reputation when it was new. And I think quite wrongly. Although, of course, the context is different. A brand new car is judged differently to one that's now second-hand and really quite good value, especially as MX-5 values are starting to go up. Values for these, not so much. They're staying relatively low. And, you know, if a 3 litre is this fast, you really don't need one, do you? You could be quite happy with much less power, I feel. 50 km/h speed limit, that's boring. I do quite like this long bonnet look. It's very much a part of the Z3 style. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of engine up front there, so it's got to go somewhere. But it's quite evocative of the E-Type, really, that same sort of long bonnet. It's a classic roadster look, something which you don't get in, say, an MGF, which has a very short bonnet. And I hope the microphone's all right, because I'm having to tie it to my hoodie. Because I haven't actually got the clip that it should have. I don't know where that's gone. It's that classic BMW 6-cylinder soundtrack, that's for sure. A really nice noise. Perhaps a little too refined, but yeah, give it the beans and grrr. So give it the beans thusly. This seems to have a real good exhaust rasp. It's quite something. And with the roof down, you can hear it all the better. I just test the kick down. I've just let the traffic get away. There's no one behind me, so I'm not holding anyone up. Here we are doing 60 kilometers an hour. The speed limit is 80, so we've got room to accelerate. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Picks up nicely, I'd say. Very smooth gearbox as well. So yes, this is a road test from New Zealand. I'm travelling around New Zealand and Australia, testing the cars I find along the way, and admiring the buses. Look at that. Some top pantograph wiper action going on there. 100 kilometers an hour, you say? This is like the national speed limit sign. Oh, that got there quickly. There is a mystery button here. What does it do? Okay, that was unexpected. Oh! By heck, she's quick. I mean, really, it's struggled to justify that amount of power on public roads. And you can't really enjoy yourself very long before you're just out of speed limit. And especially here in New Zealand, where it's 100 kilometers an hour at the best of times. 110 is the best I've seen on one stretch of dual carriageway. But generally, you've got to behave yourself, and that's not necessarily a bad thing with this car. I mean, it does sound nice when you're fully on the beans, but it's not the be-all and end-all of this car. You can cruise around in it and have a nice time without having to necessarily go crazy. Problem is, it sounds so good under full throttle, but you kind of want to drive it like that. But nice responsive gearbox, which can switch straight into a really lazy sort of a wafting mode when you're done with all the silly antics. And it's interesting, as soon as you come downhill, it downshifts. Got some sweeping bends here. Let's try. It's a good, yeah, it focuses the mind when you've got to drop straight into the sea. Oh, roadworks, bad times. Yeah, I don't think you could drive this car and not like it. It is, entertaining is definitely the right word. And look, it's using the torque of the engine there under gentle throttle, easily getting me up to 100 k's even at 2000 revs, which is unusual because I've driven BMW automatics before and found them far too kick down happy for my liking. Can't say the steering really inspires confidence, but there aren't many modern cars that do, to be honest. In case you were wondering, the boot is that large, and the boot lid opens up very wide indeed. Nice bit of engineering on it. Good place to keep your service history, and there's a bit of a lift up flap for your battery and some tools. Original BMW tools, and nice to see a full collection there. So there you go, not your average hub nut test, not your average hub nut machine, but look how beautiful it is here. Absolutely stunning backdrop, and I think not a bad looking car either for a Japanese designed, American built German car. There you go, some facts you probably didn't expect either. But I could definitely cope with driving one of these quite nicely. I think the performance has, well, there's too much performance. I mean, you're never going to be able to exploit it in the slightest, which makes it slightly pointless, and a four-cylinder perhaps a better choice. But whichever one you go for, they're very good at doing what they do. They certainly feel a much more quality package than the Mercedes-Benz SLK, and offer comfort and grand touring ahoy. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, and I shall see you in a future video. Farewell. Hello, little seagull.